You know me, I love shooting. Loads. Get your mind out of the gutter. No, I love first-person shooting. When I'm not yammering on about F-Zero, I can often be heard doing the same for Doom or Titanfall. Doom was the first game I ever played, but my FPS love affair really blew up way back on the PS2. And while the PS1 had a few cool ones, the PS2 was when FPS games really started to flourish on consoles, and that's thanks to games like these that still hold up today. First of all though, what's your favourite AC/DC song? Mine is of course Back in... That's right, Thunderstruck. Thunderstruck. We're starting off strong here because Black might genuinely be the best age FPS across the PS2. Drop into it today and you'll probably still think, yeah, this goes hard, and that's because it does. Criterion of Burnout fame basically treated it like an action movie you can steer, and that is why it holds up. The gunplay is still absurdly satisfying, thanks to those famously chunky reload animations and sound design that makes every weapon feel like it's trying to punch a hole through the TV or the surface of Mars. Even now, nearly 20 years later, the guns have more personality than any of the characters. The level design is straightforward but never dull. You've got big noisy playgrounds full of exploding scenery and enemies who behave as if they've been told they're the main character too. It is unapologetically linear, but in a way that works, and linearity is absolutely not a dirty word all the time when it comes to games. You point forward, you pull the trigger, you detonate half the Eastern Bloc. Lovely stuff. As for the story, well, it is definitely a story in which things happen. CIA nonsense, mysterious villains, gravelly voices, you know, the usual stuff. But you're not here for narrative nuance, you're here to reduce goons to fine dust, and Black still delivers that beautifully. Body count wasn't quite as beautiful sadly, but we are still keeping watch for some kind of port. Why's it gone dark? If Black is the best aged realistic shooter on PS2, Darkwatch is the best aged weird one. Capcom published a Wild West horror FPS game and we all wondered how it took so long. Even now it's absurdly easy to pick up and have fun with it. The gunplay feels snappy, the controls are smooth, and it has pulpy confidence that keeps it entertaining long after the novelty of Undead Outlaw should have worn off. You play as Jericho Cross, a train robber who accidentally unleashes a vampire lord and becomes a vampire himself. Better than getting tuberculosis, I guess. The story is once again firmly in the category of yes, stuff happens, but it keeps the action moving and gives you an excuse to shoot demon horses, undead soldiers, and anything else with glowing eyes. What really makes it age well is the atmosphere and just general vibe. Missions are brisk, and the mix of supernatural powers with Wild West hardware still feels fresh. The characters and moody lighting also mask the console's age better than most shooters. If you're wondering what happened to High Moon Studios, that's the developers, they are still around, but deep in the COD content mines where dreams go to die. It is a shame that Darkwatch never became a proper series. The PS2 deserved at least 13 of these, and I'd have played every single one of them. The wild thing about revisiting 13 on PS2 today is realising just how much better it is than its remake. Not just a little bit better, but comfortably better. The PS2 original still has that crisp, cel-shaded style that hasn't aged today, and the comic book presentation remains its secret weapon. Panels pop up to track enemies, and sound effects burst across the screen. I'm enjoying Battlefield 6, but there is nowhere near enough onomatopoeia for my liking. What really keeps this one fun is how sharp the fundamentals still are. The shooting feels solid, the weapons have character, and the light stealth sections break up the pacing without dragging you into frustration, especially because you can batter goons with chairs. You never really know what you're going to see next here, and that's why it's so good. The story adapted from the comics also deserves credit. Yes, it starts with amnesia, as tradition demands, but the conspiracy plot is genuinely engaging, pulling you across snowy bases, seaside safe houses, and government facilities as you unravel who framed you for the president's assassination. 2 decades later, 13 holds onto its identity pretty brilliantly. It's a game that Ubisoft simply wouldn't make today. If you're revisiting FPS Bond on PS2, Nightfire is the one you'll probably still want to play the living daylights out of. Although Agent Under Fire is also surprisingly solid, and GoldenEye Rogue Age remains one of the most literal game titles ever shipped. He's got an eye, and it's golden! But Nightfire is the Bond PS2 game to go back to. You've got smooth controls, great mission variety, and that unmistakable early 2000s Bond vibe without slipping into self-parody. The campaign holds up far better than you'd expect, with spectacle and sneaking that combines pretty much everything. Levels jump between stealth, gadgets, full shootouts, and the occasional high drama set piece, but nothing outstays its welcome. It's straightforward, confident, and still easy to enjoy today. Pierce Brosnan's likeness is pretty good too, but not his voice. That's supplied by Maxwell Caulfield, who, as well as sounding like a Bond villain himself, played Alistair Smythe in the Spider-Man series. The real sleeper strength though is the multiplayer. It was widely underrated at the time and is still great fun today. Yes, it's not as good as GoldenEye on the N64, but it's the kind of couch FPS multiplayer that immediately devolves into accusations of screen cheating, and that pen gun is still absolutely ridiculous. For a modern revisit, Nightfire holds up in all the right spots. I'd kill for a port. Revisiting Killzone today is a nice reminder that the PS2 could absolutely pull off an ambitious shooter the more devs mastered what it could do. It was pitched as the Halo killer back in the day, which it really wasn't, but judged on its own terms, it's aged far better than people remember. The atmosphere still lands, the art direction still gives everything a chunky industrial grit, and the Helghast remains some of the most striking enemy designs of that entire generation, actually, ever. They look really cool still. The gunplay is slower and heavier than the other shooters in this video, but that works in its favour nowadays. There is a satisfying heft to every weapon, and the recoil patterns make firefights feel scrappy. It also helps that each of the 4 playable characters bring their own weapon speciality, which adds some replay value. The campaign isn't perfect, but it has a good rhythm. You've got urban trenches, jungle ambushes, and collapsing bases all tied together with a consistently oppressive feeling of smog and like you're choking in the world around you. And honestly, the presentation alone carries a lot of the experience. The lighting, sound, and overall mood still do a lot of work. Today, Killzone is admittedly rough in places, and the controls especially might take you a minute to get used to, but it's one of the most transportative shooters around. I played it front to back. Revisiting Frontline today is a great reminder of how good Medal of Honor used to be, and how good, authentic, grounded World War II games can be when they're not chucking, I don't know, Has-Been Hotel skins in there? Has-Been Hotel, is that a thing? It's instantly more entertaining than you expect for a 23-year-old game. Wow, 23. That's got me feeling like that gif. It goes without saying that the famous D-Day landing still hits, but people forget that the rest after it is pretty good too. You'll be sabotaging supply lines, sneaking through occupied towns, raiding a U-boat base. Yeah, each mission has a clear identity and moves at a pretty brisk pace. The weapons also continue to feel great to use, with that louder-than-life punch the series used to excel at, even though you might want to, instinctively ADS these days. Visually, Frontline was actually considered quite flashy for its day. The debris, smoke, lighting, and set-piece explosions were a big deal on PS2, and the orchestral score elevated everything even further. It still looks and sounds very respectable now, though obviously don't stare at the animations too closely. Compared to the other PS2 Medal of Honor entries, Frontline remains the tightest and easiest to recommend. Rising Sun looks better and has plenty of charm, but it does lose focus halfway through, and European Assault does come pretty close overall. Frontline balances spectacle and structure better than either, and as far as we're concerned, is still the king.
I got you covered!
King Kong is one of the strangest success stories on the PS2, and not just because of that name. It's a licensed movie tie-in that not only aged well, but arguably plays better now because of how much you can appreciate it for what it is. There's no HUD, which feels really ahead of its time, which also means there's no clutter. It's basically just a tight, atmospheric, pretty cinematic FPS adventure that trusts you to figure things out without constantly holding your hand. You also get to press a button to get Adrian Brody to shout out your ammo count. And you do also get to batter things as a big ape eventually, which is always nice. The big surprise, especially revisiting it today, today is how unique the first-person sections still feel in King Kong. Playing as Jack Driscoll, weapons are limited and always a bit on the fly, so you're constantly improvising with spears, fire, and whatever sharp stick happens to be lying around. The visuals still hold up impeccably despite, some of that 2005 haziness, and the sound design does a lot of heavy lifting too. Jack Black is also very committed to his voice work here as well. Then it flips the script and lets you play as Kong, which, again, always fun. Even on PS2 hardware, with newer versions out there on things like the Xbox 360, King Kong on PS2 holds up pretty dang well. And that's a fact. Shouldn't. Red Faction is a PS2 game that you probably could have sworn debuted on PC first due to the tech involved, but nope, May 2001 on the PS2, baby! Geomod was a revelation at the time. It allowed proper real-time destruction in an era before Battlefield let you kill a guy with a skyscraper. Even today, carving your own tunnels, blasting shortcuts through bases, or just knocking holes in a room because it looks funny is still hugely satisfying. I will be honest though, the moment-to-moment action hasn't aged quite as gracefully. It's not the fastest or smoothest shooter on the console, and the performance can dip when things get busy. That's the reason why I didn't include the original Half-Life here, even though I do have a lot of fond memories of it. But once your brain figures out that you can literally make your own routes and blow stuff up, the slower pace becomes part of the fun. It plays more like a sandbox with huge holes in that box than a pure corridor shooter. The atmosphere also helps and is still pretty distinct. You got dusty mines, oppressive Martian facilities, and that early 2000s industrial sci-fi vibe. Even the combat shows its age, the world building carries things pretty well. And it is worth mentioning that the sequel, Red Faction 2, is a pretty decent follow-up with dual wielding, which is always a great time. And it was also 2 years before Halo 2 made it a big thing, so there you go. Red Faction 2 is more straightforward, more traditional, and is a lot less interested in full map excavation, but it is still fun and absolutely worth checking out after the original. No One Lives Forever on PS2 is a wonderful little time capsule, not least of which because you actually have to travel back in time a bit to play it properly. It's a slightly trimmed down port of one of the smartest, funniest shooters of its era, but still absolutely worth playing today. In fact, if you want a goofy alternative to Nightfire, this is ideal. Kate Archer remains one of the best protagonists of the time, and armed with gadgets that feel equally clever and daft in that perfect 60s spy way. What makes it hold up now is the variety. Most PS2 FPS games pick either stealth or action and cling to it, but No One Lives Forever cheerfully mixes a bit of everything. There are gadget puzzles, quick shootouts, sneaking, lockpicking, and a steady drip feed of set pieces that keep the pacing lively. Even when the stealth shows its age a little bit, the levels stay fun because they're designed around giving you options rather than locking you into one approach. It's also colourful, playful, and generally very charming. You've got bright interiors, jazzy stings, and enemy chatter that will still get a titter out of you. The PS2 version isn't the prettiest way to play, but the style outruns the hardware limitations. The sequel, No One Lives Forever 2, is even better, but here's the twist. You can't legally buy either game anywhere due to the infamous rights mess. And weirdly enough, that means the old PS2 disc is probably the most convenient, accessible way left to experience the start of this brilliant series, but the sequel actually never came to PS2, so you can't actually download or play that one properly anywhere. Who said the future of gaming would be perfect?
Surrender or be destroyed. Smash them all! Eliminate all humans.
The first game was a fun but kind of underdone experiment, and the second game was the next evolution of that, but Feature Perfect is the point where the Time Splitters series hit its peak. Revisiting it today, it's still one of the most effortlessly fun shooters on the PlayStation 2. Or anywhere, really. Fast action, brain-tickling sound effects, arcadey shooting, and a breezy sense of humour that somehow never gets in the way of the actual gunplay. It's a comedy-tinged FPS where the jokes land and the shooting just feels super fun. It is pretty much perfect. The campaign holds up especially well. The time-hopping setup lets each level play with a different theme without feeling disjointed, and the game constantly throws new ideas at you. There are train shootouts, haunted houses full of zombies, big sci-fi arenas, and plenty of timey-wimey stuff. Cortez is still a great lead too, with that straight-faced delivery making every ridiculous situation even better. And the multiplayer, well, that's still absolute top-tier PS2 nonsense that can be a good way to waste an afternoon with a mate. Even just playing against bots is a good excuse to crank out the Toxicity CD and get blasting. On a pretty crowded console, Future Perfect stands out as one of the best pick up and have fun immediately shooters ever made. It hasn't lost a step. Right, time to step into the outro. Actual gang, those are just some PS2 FPS games that are still well worth playing today and can offer you a ton of fun. I don't want to cry about Time Splitters for the 15,000th time, so I'll leave you with that. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you want me to do next. I've been Jim for Culture Vultures. Been good to have you, and I'll catch you when I catch you.